This is not a plot of a show, nor is it a made-up story where scientists break children's brains and control them. In fact, this is reality. Yes, in the real world, real government agencies kidnapped children, gave them drugs, tried to control their minds. This experiment went on for 30 years without telling anyone. The top officials of the CIA kept funding it, and all this for just one purpose: to control the human brain. No, we are not going to talk about any fanciful project here, which is largely considered a conspiracy theory. In fact, we are going to talk about actual documented history, and in declassified files you will find today on the official pages of the CIA. Yes, all this is not the imagination of any writer. In fact, these are real-life experiments, a program that was so dark, so twisted, and so illegal that the CIA later burned its own records. And finally, the question arises: how far can any government or intelligence agency go to control our brains? Well, I'm Uzi, and in today's video, we are going to learn the story behind Mkultra. Have you ever seen a hostile agent of another government? No, I mean testing it out on an American citizen. I guess I must seem very cold-blooded about this, but I don't recall ever having been very much preoccupied with that issue. Because it's simple. Art never creates anything, but it imitates reality. And the reality behind Stranger Things, it was a real, documented, legal CIA experiment, an experiment called Mkultra. General William was an American soldier. He had seen a lot of difficulties in his life, but one thing never changed: his passion. He did everything that normal people were afraid to do. During World War II, he created a new intelligence department called the OSS, Office of Strategic Services. Basically, CIA's grandfather was the OSS. William's motto was simple: if it hasn't been done before, do it. And for this purpose, he chose a scientist, Stanley Lowell, an industrial chemist from Boston, a very clean, respectable American businessman. But from the inside, a man who was ready to turn the world upside down in the name of a science. William told Stanley, "Your job is simple. Every American scientist has an evil child hidden inside. Wake him up and get him to do something he's never thought of before." Stanley loved William's idea so much that he named his OSS Dr. Moriarty. If you don't know Dr. Moriarty, he's the villain of the Sherlock Holmes stories. Basically, a very cold, calculating, and criminal mastermind who could use his brain to do very dangerous things. Anyway, let's get back to the story. It had been 2 years since his plan. 2 years later, another person joins his plan. His name was George Hunter White, a former narcotics agent, OSS captain. White knew only one thing: to manipulate people. Drug dealers, pimps, smugglers, all kinds of criminals could do it in just 5 minutes. Now, imagine a scientist like Stanley and a criminal-minded operative like White. A deadly combo. Both of them do a thought experiment for the first time. Can we control the human brain with drugs? With this question, the Truth Drug Committee comes into action. All senior doctors, chemists, and intelligence officers come together and decide which drug can take a person out of reality so that we can control his brain. And to know all this, they needed actual human beings, actual patients on whom they can test all this. This is St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C. This is the building where normal people used to come thinking that their mental health is being treated, but they didn't know that they had become a test subject for the government and CIA. Just here, different kinds of drugs were being tested on these patients, and this whole plan was being baited by the government, American government and CIA. And at that time, the government had only one goal: to control the human brain to such an extent that it gets ready to do whatever we want it to do without thinking. Now, at the same time, when the OSS was doing all these experiments, one thing was such that it made the American government sleepless. LSD, a hallucinogenic drug, that is, lysergic acid diethylamide. But America was not worried because it was a drug, but because the Cold War was going on. And America's biggest fear at that time was the Soviet Union. That is, today's Russia. So the question was, what if the Soviet Union gets it? What if Russia gets it first? And in the midst of this fear, there is a very big discovery about LSD. This discovery is in the Basel city of Switzerland, in Sandow's laboratories. A chemist named Dr. Albert Hofmann was working on LSD for an ordinary day. That, by mistake, he isolates LSD. And now this LSD drug could completely numb the human brain and could take it to a completely different world. That is the drug that had now become the drug that the CIA was desperately looking for. This is real footage of the hallucinations effect of LSD, which was released by researchers. That is, after taking this drug, what happens to the human brain? I know that for chemists, LSD would be a very normal drug. But think about that time, during the Cold War era, when such drugs were not so common. At that time, a drug like this was found, as if the CIA had gone mad. At that time, all the research on LSD in America was done by only one doctor, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb. He was a chemist of the CIA. And he was also the head of Mkultra, because he was obsessed with LSD and all such drugs. Then the U.S. is not ready to accept this publicly. And neither was this doctor himself ready to believe at that time. But even today, there are files on this whole study, and the chapter of LSD is the longest in it. Now, on one side, where America had gone completely crazy, there is another very big discovery. Actually, there was something in the remote mountain areas of southern Mexico. Until then, people thought it was just a myth. Its name was magic mushrooms. But when the CIA came to know about this myth, they thought that where LSD can be so beneficial, why not get magic mushrooms there as well? Who knows? Knows we can use it as a weapon of mind control. So the CIA hired a part-time chemist for this. He was sent to the same area to find magic mushrooms. But to do this, he had to manipulate a bank's vice president. And these were R. Jordan Wesson. Wesson was an amateur mycologist. He was an expert of mushrooms. The CIA wanted this guy to get him direct access so that he can extract those mushrooms. The place where these mushrooms were actually growing, these were the mushrooms from which psilocybin was extracted. A psilocybin compound, just like LSD. When the CIA found out about Wesson's discovery, it became active immediately, and it launched its own operations to extract these mushrooms. But now, you may ask, the CIA is continuously doing research and making different kinds of drugs. Some patients have even done experiments on it. What does the CIA want? The answer is quite simple. After getting these different kinds of drugs, the CIA wanted to make a compound that can completely change a person's behavior, mental state, and decision-making. Both psilocybin and LSD were making the exact compound that could give a person so much addiction that he would completely lose his mental state. In the beginning, a hospital was set up to test these compounds. We talked about this earlier. These drugs were being tested on patients to check their mental state. These patients were already mentally unstable. They had come to the hospital to get their mental health checked. But to test this heavy compound, the CIA needed normal people, especially those who were mentally strong, so that they could test the effect of this compound on their mind. Some military officers or agents, those who had secret information. The CIA wanted to test if we give this drug to a sensitive person who has secret information from the government. Will he keep his secret information in front of anyone? To find this out, Operation Midnight Climax was launched. This operation was led by George Henry White. We talked about him in the beginning. Because he was a high-ranking narcotics official for a long time, he knew a lot about the CIA. With the help of White, some safe houses were built. The mission was very dirty. Basically, prostitutes were hired in bars. The officers used to seduce them and bring them to this safe house. They used to seduce them and give them this drug. After giving them the drug, they used to try to get their information. They used to try to know how many secrets they could keep in front of the prostitutes. You won't believe this. All this interaction was observed by the CIA's senior officers through a one-way mirror. Yes, exactly. This is not a theory or an accusation. This is a real operation of the CIA. Its documentation is still available. The most disgusting and disturbing part is that George Hinderwhite, who was leading this operation, was taping all these interactions and recording them so that these officers could be manipulated later. Because the victims were actually high-ranking officers, the CIA kept funding this operation for a long time. These operations were taking place in New York. After this, these operations were also, but all, these operations of the CIA are shocked when Frank Olson's case comes forward. Frank actually was a chemist in New York. In 1953, during a meeting, the CIA officer gave him LSD without informing him. After that, Frank went into severe depression, and a few days later, he fell out of his hotel window and died. After Frank Olson's death, the experiments of Mkultra were a little less, but it was less for a while. It slowed down for a while. After that, the experiments of Mkultra started again. Harlot was a tennis pro, healthy and full of life. In 1953, she was a private patient of the New York State Psychiatric Institute. She was given 5 ECTs. Injections of masculine derivative, and on the 5th injection, Harlot died. The experiments that were taking place in this hospital were done by a Cameron with a human brain. Cameron's idea was very disgusting and very horrifying, making a human brain like a tooler's brain, erasing all his memories and then controlling it. He gave insulin to the patient and put him in a coma. Different tapes were recorded in this and kept under his pillow. And when he came out of the coma, he became a completely new person. His old memories were almost erased, and he repeated the same thing that he had been told. Cameron and his team called this whole process deep battering. An extreme step was also taken in this, where electroshocks were given at a very extreme level. The target of this electroshock therapy was very simple: erase the complete memory of the patient. Patients were given 45 high-voltage shocks. And even at this point, doctors used to say that deep battering is not complete. That is, the memories have not been erased yet. More current is yet to be given. And in 1973, Mkultra was officially closed. Prior to this, these experiments continued for 30 years, and after closing at this time, all his evidences were burned. All his studies were burned so that later the CIA or these doctors could not be held accountable. All this came to the world when for the first time John Marks wrote this book. The Search of the Manchurian Candidate. And then in the hearings of the 1970s, the CIA finally accepted that this program ever existed. But all this was denied because it was a harmless scientific curiosity. It was just a thought. Nothing much worked on it, and no one was harmed much. A family of a victim of Mkultra is running lawsuits against the CIA, but no response from the CIA. Neither any apology nor any accountability. It was horrible. My father was a victim of Dr. Cameron. He was a 27-year-old. My father, Charles, was a patient of Dr. Cameron. After this, psychologists did further research on how to control the human mind, but the result was that no one can completely control the human mind. Yes, we know that there are so many distractions today. I mean to say AI and all of that stuff. People assume that the human mind is being controlled, but not like the way the CIA or the government wanted to do it. There are ways where the human mind can be studied. You can talk to someone. You can know about their personality. You can find out about them. But you can't control their mind. That's totally impossible. Think about it. At that time, when the government didn't have the means or AI, when all this was possible, when the government was secretly operating, who knows? Even today, the government is secretly operating to control our mind. Why won't these superpowers experiment on that thing again? Ask yourself, can the human mind be controlled through experiments? Let me know your thoughts. I'll see you in the next video.